I'm Eleanor Wachtel, and I'm here to tell you about my series of interviews at this year's Blue Metropolis Festival on April 24th to 27th. I'm so pleased and honored to have been invited to have this role at the festival. And I'd like to begin with something that's very special. We have an exclusive preview of the new novel by the award-winning Madeleine Tien. The Book of Records is officially coming out more than a week after the festival, but Montrealer Madeleine Tien wanted you to have that first look and enjoy the first conversation about this long-awaited work, almost a decade in the making. Over the years, Madeleine has talked about her obsessions that are reflected in this new book, inspired by the lives and work of the 20th century political thinker Hannah Arendt, the 17th century Dutch philosopher Spinoza, Baruch Spinoza, and the 8th century Chinese poet Du Fu. Madeleine is nothing if not ambitious. For instance, in relation to Hannah Arendt, she's been profoundly moved, she said, by, quote, the deep commitment that Arendt shows to the act of thinking and what the act of thinking means for how we choose to be in the world. Elsewhere, in a talk Madeleine called Spinoza's Rooms, she says, I hang around wondering if I'll ever understand what they do. Arendt, Spinoza, Dufu. They are my flawed and mysterious family. I don't want to let them down. Madeleine's fictional imagining of these three fascinating historical figures deliberately focuses on periods of their lives that are not well documented. As she puts it, although bound by history, the novel dwells in the moments when biographical certainties are non-existent, scarce, or blurred. In other words, it frees her imagination to weave a multi-layered story of migration and impermanence. She explores experiences across continents and countries with her characteristic ambition and unique poetic voice. A reminder of Madeleine Tien's own background. She was born in Vancouver in 1974. Her parents were immigrants, her mother from Hong Kong, her father from Malaysia. They spoke different dialects of Chinese. Madeleine started writing stories while still a student at the University of British Columbia. They were published as part of her first collection, Simple Recipes, which won the Ethel Wilson Fiction Prize, the City of Vancouver Book Award, and the Van City Book Prize. Her first novel, Certainty, won another slew of awards, followed in 2013 by Dogs at the Perimeter, evoking 1970s Cambodia during the terrors of the Khmer Rouge. But it's Madeleine Tien's last novel in 2016, Do Not Say We Have Nothing, set in part against the Cultural Revolution in China, that was her breakout book, winning the Giller Prize and the Governor General's Award, as well as being shortlisted for the Booker Prize and many more. Her work appears in the New Yorker and Granta magazine and has been translated into 25 languages. Of course, those of you who are Blue Met regulars will recall that last year she was kind enough to interview me for the tribute evening, a conversation that was broadcast last fall for the Writers and Company finale show. Now I get to turn the tables. Do join us on Friday, April 25th at 6 o'clock, and the ticket includes a copy of the new novel and a glass of wine. The interplay of fact and fiction, biography and imagination, are also present in the work of another one of my guests at this festival, Claire Massoud, author of This Strange Eventful History. Also impressive, spanning 7 decades of her family's story from 1940 to the first years of the 21st century. I've known Claire for a long time. I first heard about her when she published her 1994 debut novel, When the World Was Steady. She was living in London at the time. She worked at The Guardian, so I assumed she was British. But Claire was born in Greenwich, Connecticut in 1966. Her mother was Canadian and her father French Algerian, or Pied Noir as they were called. In fact, her family settled in Algeria around 1850. 100 years later, with intimations of the War of Independence, they relocated to France and other parts of the world. Claire spent part of her childhood in Australia, where her father was working, as well as in Canada and the US. As she recently wrote, when I was growing up, my family moved across cities and continents. By the time I was 12, I had 8 different homes in 3 countries and attended 5 different schools. She also went every year to stay with her Algerian French grandparents in Toulon. Later, she studied at Yale and Cambridge. She carries 3 passports, Canadian, American, and French, which made it interesting when she was named one of Granta magazine's Best of Young British Novelists in 2003. Claire wrote When the World Was Steady when she was in her early 20s. It was a finalist for the PEN/Faulkner Award. Her next novel, The Last Life, published 25 years ago, was even more ambitious, tracing 3 generations of a French Algerian family who try to reestablish a life in the south of France, an evocation of the political and emotional inheritance of the Algerian French. The New York Times top critic wrote that the novel was mesmerizing. The portrait it draws of a family and its disintegration is so vivid. Its rendering of the conflicting claims of memory and denial so fraught with felt emotions that the reader might mistake it for a memoir. Claire Massoud has published many widely praised novels, including her 2006 bestseller, The Emperor's Children, set mostly in New York among 30-somethings in the months just before and after 9/11. Her latest book, This Strange Eventful History, has been described as a tour de force, brilliant and heartbreaking, and Massoud as one of contemporary literature's best. The novel is humane and wide-ranging as the perspective shifts among the different members of the family, starting with the Algerian French grandfather, who, in real life, hand-wrote a 1,500-page memoir that he gave to his granddaughters, one of whom was Claire. As she has said, I think there's the question of how much you can walk away from your history and how much it follows you. In a way, what she's referring to is loss of country, of memory, of an identity. The secrets and shame that, she writes, in telling their story, I would wish at last to heal. For me, it's a pleasure to spend time with such vivid, rich storytelling, as artful as it is affecting, informed by such intelligence and sensitivity, the intimacy of interiority, set against social and political upheaval. And now to spend time with you in Claire's company. That's a treat. Do join us on Sunday, April 27th at 11:30 in the morning. And finally, to fill out my dance card, a conversation with this year's winner of the Blue Metropolis Grand Prix, a man I've interviewed many times over the decades, the remarkable Salman Rushdie. But he needs no introduction. I look forward to seeing you all at the festival.